ideas and insights from this book as well. So we will learn much from you. In this session, he will share with us a very interesting topic. I already mentioned AI and religion, a perspective from Buddhism. And yeah, hopefully we learn much from you. So Ajahn Sorats, if I could ask you to take over the virtual stage now.
Yes, thanks a lot, Leo. And it's my great pleasure to talk in this Wednesday forum, sorry, organized by the Center for, I don't remember the name of the center, Cross-Cultural Religious Studies at Gajah Mada University. So I'm going to share my screen. So here it is. And the topic is kind of a reflection on AI and religion. So how are the two related one to the other in various ways? So what I'm going to do is to explore various dimensions of the possible connections between AI, which is a form of computer technology, and religion. So this is our Wednesday forum. Now the correct title of the Center for Religious and Cross-Cultural Studies, Gajah Mada University, in collaboration with my own university. So here's the poster for today's talk. I put this just to for the sake of reference. And here's some information about myself. Now, I'm going to talk about the following topics. I will start first with kind of a brief introduction on what exactly is artificial intelligence. It's a bit technical, but I don't want the talk to be technical because I'm not a technical scholar on computer technology myself. I'm from philosophy, but at least when we talk about AI, at least we should know something about what we are talking about and how exactly is AI is making a lot of impact on our society. And the next topic is a question, and it's kind of an invitation for us to think together on various ways in which AI and religions can be connected. And next topic will be possible applications. That is one way in which AI can be connected with religion, which is how AI, how the technology can be applied, and in fact it has been applied to aid the works of religion in various ways. Religious works are very many, and we can conceptualize, we can think about how AI could help facilitate those works. That is one way in which AI and religion can be related. Also, AI can be an aid to practicing. This is more on the individual, especially in Buddhism, where the emphasis is, quite a lot on individual practice, like meditation. And one topic where AI and religion can be related, connected, is to investigate how AI can, be helpful in individual practice, for example, meditation. And also, next topic. So this is like a survey. I'm talking about possible connections, relations between the two. Perhaps those of us who listen to my talk, who participate in this forum, can come up with their own research ideas and investigate on their own one or more of these topics that we discuss in the forum. That will be very, very beneficial. I'm going to talk about religious attitudes toward AI. And as Leo has mentioned, I'm from a Buddhist culture and I'm a Buddhist practitioner myself. So my examples will come mostly from Buddhism, but I intend my talk to be more general in such a way that you are invited to think about the relation that could take place between Islam, for example, or other religions toward AI. So what are the attitudes? I mean, how does a Buddhist look at AI, for example? And then next topic is religious ethics. That is the topic of the book that Leo has kindly mentioned, the book on ethics of AI, a Buddhist viewpoint. So the main idea of the book is that I am looking at this field in applied ethics, which is AI ethics, ethics of artificial intelligence. And I see how Buddhist philosophy could make a contribution to the ongoing discussion and investigation in AI ethics. So that's another way where the two concepts can be related. And then a big question that I think many of us are interested, can AI itself, I mean, this is a bold question. And I think we can start to discuss and think about whether it's possible for AI itself, I mean the technology. And we can also think about robots, because robots are machines that are supposed to act like beings. And many robots look like human beings in the first place, like humanoid robots. And their brains are powered by AI. And a natural question that comes up is when robots have mimicked many of the behaviors that belong to us human beings in many ways, could it become religious, or could it become ethical, or could it become conscious, self-aware? That is the kind of question that philosophers have been thinking and debating for quite some time. So we are going to touch upon that topic also. And then I would like to conclude by this question on what is to be done to shape up the kind of future we want. This question is related to the topic on the religious ethics of AI. Perhaps religions can make a contribution when we would like to answer what should be done to shape up the kind of future we want. So those are the topics. Let us move on. What is AI? There are several definitions of artificial intelligence, and in fact, it's a kind of an industry where there are so many people, so many scholars proposing their own definitions. However, for the sake of our understanding, for the sake of the talk today, when I am talking about AI, I am talking about machines or technology a kind of technology that is capable of thinking in some way, not in all ways, because there are some aspects of thinking that AI cannot emulate as yet, but for calculation, for the kind of repetitive thinking, the AI can do very well. So there are certain aspects of cognitive action that used to belong to human beings. For example, calculating, or now AI can do many things like driving on its own, and so on. So engineers have tried to come up or to build technologies and machines in such a way that they are trying to copy or to emulate human thinking. So basically, that is what people who are in the field of AI are talking about when they talk about AI. However, this is a very broad definition, and there are several narrower classifications, and AI can be classified into many different categories. We don't need to go into those deeper issues. Only that we are thinking about machines or algorithms or software that is capable in some way, to a certain extent, of cognitive action, right? That's AI. And so for most of us, like, to summarize, AI is the kind of technology that can think, but that is a very, very simple, could be overly broad definition. And there are some examples of the AI that we are perhaps using without knowing that we are, engaging with AI already. For example, when you search in the search terms will be analyzed, manipulated, processed by sophisticated, very sophisticated algorithms, so that you come up, so that you get the search results that you want. And these algorithms have the power of AI because it has the power of their own thinking, autonomous thinking to a certain extent. And the search terms that you enter into Google will become part of the huge amount of data that these sophisticated algorithms are processing. So that's one way. That's a very intimate way, because I believe that every one of us is engaging with Google search all the time. Today's AI is very good at analyzing data and seeing patterns, especially seeing patterns. In some cases, they are capable of seeing the patterns that we humans cannot see because it, elude our grasp, so to speak. But AI can be very sophisticated in that they can spot, they can see the kind of connections that human beings cannot see. And this can be very powerful in many kinds of applications. And when we talk about applications, apart from Google search or seeing patterns, AI can be used to, you go to websites nowadays and see how AI can do all these things already. For example, writing up an essay in English, or I believe in Thai language also. It's only a matter of work by computer scientists in Thailand to come up with AI generated Thai language pieces of writing, because in English it has been done, for quite some time. Also composing pieces of music, anything that concerns information and data, in various ways. It can be processed and manipulated by AI. So when we talk about AI, the point is this: when we talk about AI, we are not talking about technology from, because you are in Indonesia, I'm from Thailand. We have this common experience of looking at the West as kind of the source of more advanced technologies that come to us, and we are usually at the receiving end of these technologies, of course, including AI, right? So we in the East, in Southeast Asia, for example, have this experience of looking at technology as something coming to us, like being imposed on us, something coming from far away, something that we don't have any real connection with. But AI is changing all that, because it's, it has become part and parcel our everyday life, because everybody is using the mobile phone, for example, with social media and search engines and so on. And those are powered by AI today. So this is an example of a song generated by AI. I'm going to show you how it sounds just for a few seconds. I have not turned on the internal audio when I share, but I'm using this microphone, so perhaps you can hear it. So just an example, and you can search for it, AI generated music on your own. It sounds like contemporary music, the kind of music that you hear, for example, when you go to a shopping mall, for example. And AI can also generate music in other styles. And it is only a project for computer scientists to come up with, AI generated traditional Thai music, for example, because there are idioms of Thai music, and Thai musicians, I mean traditional Thai musicians, use these idioms to put together to make traditional Thai music. So I think it's straightforward for AI to, manipulate, analyze, process the idioms, musical idioms, and come up with their own kind of creation in quotation mark, right? Creation of music. But this shows us that AI has become more and more pervasive in our lives. This is another example. Oh no, just the old one. So, and this is a website where you can ask AI to write up an essay. The URL is here, thegoodai.com. And perhaps you might wonder, can AI be that good? Or is there such a thing, is the good AI or what? But this is the name of the web where you can use AI to generate an essay. I don't know what topic, but you can explore the website on your own. Both full essays and outlines of an essay. And this is good to know when we talk about definitions of AI. There are two kinds of AI, narrow one and general one. What we have today and what we have seen in the examples in the previous slides are narrow AIs. Narrow AI is AI for specific purposes only, such as composing music, such as writing up an essay, and so on. What we don't have as of now, the year 2022, is a general AI. And it is general AI that has created kind of a fear or uproar or the sense of competition between human beings and the AI that you might have experienced in when you see movies or engage in social media or other things. So general AI is the kind of AI that is capable of being conscious and understanding language in the same way as we human beings do understand language. And they can, do everything that we human beings can do. Some scientists have surmised that by the year 2035, we will have an instance or an example of general AI. So only 13 years from now. But some scholars or scientists have put the date much further, perhaps the year 2060. In any case, many scientists agree that sooner or later, general AI, the kind of AI that is conscious and is able to do cognitively do anything, everything that a human being can do, is a distinct possibility. It's only a matter of time, either 10 years from now or 2060, 40 years from now, but it will come. There are a small minority from my research, from my review of what is there in the discussion. There is a small minority of philosophers and scientists who believe, on the contrary, that general AI is not possible at all, but it's up for grab. I mean, it depends not only on the technical matters, but also on how we conceptualize consciousness. How we think what constitutes consciousness, human consciousness from the beginning, and how we conceptualize thinking. I mean, what kind of thing do we want to call thinking? And people have not fully agreed on those. But in any case, the distinction between narrow AI and general AI is clear. Narrow AI is what we have right now. And general AI, you can think about a movie like The Matrix, for example, or The Terminator, or, that's science fiction. Perhaps there could be an instance of general AI that is more modest, but they are capable of fulfilling the definition of general AI nonetheless. That could be the works for the future, and we have to wait and see. So in what ways, going on, can AI and religions get connected? How can we make connections conceptually between the two? And as I have said, there are many ways. One way is AI as an aid to religious works. I mean, not only individual practice like a Buddhist practitioner, but the works of a temple. You see, the main difference between Buddhism and Islam, for example, is that Buddhism is a monastic religion. We have monks, we have temples and monasteries, and there is a strict separation between monks on the one hand and lay people on the other hand. And Islam, I'm not an expert by any means, but according to what I understand in Islam, Islam is a non-monastic religion. So there are no monasteries, and there are no monks in Islam. But in Buddhism, what happens when there are monks who work in monasteries is that the monks are supposed to work in their monasteries. In the old times, most of what they did was to copy manuscripts. In the West, they did that. In Thailand, old Siam, they also did that. They are supposed to either memorize long passages of the scripture, or they could, they were supposed to write down on palm leaves the scriptures, and AI can come into these kinds of work in the monastery. For example, they can analyze the text when you want to search for certain strings of words in a long, very long piece of text. You can do very, very fast in AI, that kind of thing. And when AI is capable of thinking autonomously, we can imagine ways in which AI can help in terms of textual analysis. That's one thing. And management of religious affairs. I mean, religious affairs, what is happening in monasteries is like what is happening in many organizations, big and large organizations. So AI can be helpful in financial matters, or keeping records, or analyzing records, or all those kinds of things, right? Big problem. This is another topic where perhaps AI can help. Big problem for Buddhism in Thailand is how to make the religion relevant to contemporary situation. And this is a big problem. When people talk about Buddhism in Thailand, this is the number one question that always come up, because the Buddhist establishment, the church of Buddhism, to make a comparison, is bound by their traditions and by their rules to such an extent that they have found themselves to be kind of alienated from, especially from the younger generations of Thai people. It's a big problem. And perhaps, this is my suggestion. AI can help in many ways. Could be related to the topics I mentioned earlier about management, religious affairs, or textual analysis. So As an example, here is a robot. Now, since we don't have general AI yet, this is only a kind of and could be an ordinary robot where it can do certain things like, putting the palms of the hand together to, make this very Buddhist gesture. And the monk, the robot monk here can recite certain Buddhist scriptures depending on, what scriptures have been programmed into the monk. So the monk can stand inside a Buddhist temple, you can imagine. And then people come to the temples and they see these robot monks who is reciting the Buddhist scripture. And at least it's a way to remind people that, there are these scriptures and they can listen to the scriptures and so on. And this can be an aid to their understanding of what is going on in terms of the meaning of the scripture, right? So this is one way, fun way. The robot itself does not have to be fully AI. It does not have to be able to answer questions or engage in conversation. That is what is supposed to happen in the case of normal AI. But the robot doesn't have to be able to talk, to converse with people, only to recite these scriptures that could perhaps fulfill the idea of how to make Buddhism relevant, perhaps. And this is from a website. There is this virtual monk, and I have known about this virtual monk before. And when I did my research for the talk, I found him, him. He's a virtual monk. He does not exist. You can see his face here. And so this is a news article in a website. Thailand's first virtual monk targets at new generation of Buddhists, right? This is one way to meet the challenge of how to make Buddhism more relevant to the younger generations of Thais. So the same monk also appears on Facebook, and he has his own Facebook page, AI Monk, and the Thai words there, it says, his name, Pramaha AI, so venerable AI, so his name is AI, and it is classified as an entertainment website, but you can do your own search on your Facebook page. If you are interested, you can search. I think you can search AI Monk, and then you can see this page. This is the URL of the news article I mentioned earlier. So in case you are interested, you can. I think I will leave the copy of this file to Leo in case you might want to do your own investigation afterwards. So this is what I talked about is one way to look at AI. It's more like a fun way to aid in making religion more relevant. Plus, the mundane works that take place all the time in monastery, in large organizations. But AI can also be an aid in practicing, in individual practicing. What I mean is this. This is an app which is available both for the iPhone and for the Android phones. The title of the app is Buddhify, meditation done differently, and you can download the app. And I don't know whether AI, in a strict definition of AI, is used by this app, but it doesn't matter much because talking about the relations between Buddhism, religion on the one hand, and technology, information technology, which could be AI on the other. And we are talking about, and this is an example of an attempt to use technology to help with practicing Buddhism, because practicing Buddhism means, among other things, you have to do your own meditation. And many people find it quite difficult to do their meditation because of various reasons. As a result, many apps, I mean, not only Buddhify, but you search on Google Play meditation apps, and you find many apps on Android or iPhone, which are supposed to help with your meditation. So you don't need to go to a meditation teacher. You can do everything on your own with your mobile phone. I don't know how successful those apps are in the long run. And in Thailand, they are not very popular anyway, because there are so many live meditation teachers in the country. So people don't really need those apps. But in the West, it has become more popular. So that's one thing where AI or information technology in general can be helpful, perhaps, to individual practicing religion. And you can imagine in Islam, I don't know, I think in Islam you also do your meditation. And in such a case, these apps might be useful. It's up to you. And this is from the Wired magazine. It says Muslim scholars are working to reconcile Islam and AI. Artificial intelligence is being developed in uber secular, overly secular Western labs. What should devout Muslims make of it? So this is very clearly a piece of writing dealing directly, specifically on the topic that we are talking about. And you can have a look at the article on your own through this URL on below. So that is an example, and I invite you to read these articles, among other things, on your own. We move on, coming back to Thailand, and the Buddha statue you see is the most venerated Buddha image in the country, the Emerald Buddha in the Grand Palace. However, there's a website where you can do not only meditations, but you can do chanting, reciting the prayers on your own with your computer or with your mobile phones. So you set up your mobile phone in front of you, and the mobile phone will show you the image of very venerated image, the green emerald Buddha And then there will be instructions, there will be sounds of of the prayers where you can follow and you can do your own prayers, you can do your own practice with the technology. So that's the idea. So Buddhist attitude toward AI. When we look at the general attitude toward Buddhism, when you look at the general attitude of Buddhism toward technology, basically it's generally neutral. I mean, Buddhism on the whole does not seem to have anything against technology, because the emphasis is more on cultivating the mind. The emphasis, of course, there are other sectors of Buddhists or Buddhist practices that are geared toward more social aspects, but on the whole, the emphasis is on cultivating the mind, and that means cultivating the individual mind. In such a case, technology is something outside, is something that the practitioner should look at. And if the technology can be helpful, that's fine. And in the case where technology brings about certain things that are inimical to the practice, that would be not very good. So it depends on how the individual practitioner looks at the technology in question. But on the whole, I mean, if the practitioner is kind of more interested in cultivating his mind, doing individual practice, then technology seems to be rather neutral. That's what I mean when I wrote there. So generally, Buddhism does not view AI, to be more specific. Buddhism does not generally view AI as a threat because of the reasons I just mentioned, unless it interferes with achieving the goal of practice. Unless, for example, AI is programmed in such a way that it promotes instead of tranquility of the mind, but the AI is programmed to promote, like, avarice or the desire to go out and enjoy sensual pleasures too much, or to buy things, or to go to shopping malls. And that kind of thing will be the sense where AI will be viewed negatively in Buddhism, but not AI as a kind of technology on its own in itself, right? It's only when it's, obstructs the or hinders the progress of the practice.
3 minutes left.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm approaching the end of my talk. Religious ethics of AI. Another form of connection between AI and religion is for religion to inform the ethics of AI itself. And this can be a very large topic. But as I said earlier, we are surveying the possible topics. So this is one topic, but it can be a large one. We already have secular ethics, especially in the West. For example, Kantian ethics, utilitarian ethics. But we don't need, because we are not focusing only on Europe or the West. The world is larger than that. So we don't need to have only one kind of ethics, which is Western secular ethics. We can start with the basic attitude toward AI itself. Are we going to accept the technology or not? I think technology can be made more pliable. It's difficult to do, but with concerted effort, it can be achieved. At least it is better than throwing everything out. That's my goal. The idea is that I don't think we can like eliminate AI from our midst. That is not possible because it has etched itself into much of everything that we engage with in our daily life. So the thing that we need to do, we need to be clear about what needs to be done, what should be done, what should not be done, which is AI ethics. And this can be informed by Buddhist ethics. That's the topic of my book, the book that Leo mentioned earlier. And then we go from there. We talk about regulations and then international collaborative effort into channeling how AI, how the power of AI is used. So I would like to end with this question. Will AI itself become religious? Answer is that it depends. You know, a very safe answer, of course. But I would like it to be, I mean, I would like AI to become religious when it is possible, which would mean we are talking about general AI, the kind of AI that can be fully conscious and self-aware. When or if they become self-aware, they become totally like us, we can talk with them like, you know, face to face. They have to become ethical and religious. I mean, there is no other way. Otherwise, we cannot live with them. Otherwise, you know, we cannot regard them as being equal to us in any way. It's a requirement. And it's a requirement for those who are developing the AI technology for the future also. That's you know, basically that is what I have been pushing forward for this past few years. So what can we do to shape up the kind of future we want? There are several ways. One of which is, you know, this kind of talk where we try to understand things and we try to generate ideas and viewpoints and discussions. And hopefully this will lead to further action. So I'm sorry, I perhaps exceeded the time limit. So this is all I have for my talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And please give a virtual applause to Ajahn Surats for the fine presentation. And even though it's only roughly 45 minutes, but it's give us he laid before us the outline, the issues that AI truly truly the concern of us all. Okay, so yeah, for myself itself, there are many questions I want to put forward, but I want to let the audience to share their thought. We have roughly 35 minutes of discussion, so please raise your hand. I will check from here, and then open your mic, or you want to write it down in the chat box. Question as concise as possible. Introduce yourself and then put your question in concise, so we will have more time to discuss, and Ajahn Surats can explain more or clarify more. Please. If not, I want to take the opportunity first. Okay, while we're waiting, I want to start, Ajahn, that I think in the discussion of AI, there's an idea of singularity, in which you already mentioned in your presentation somehow, but singularity somehow means That's the consequence of certain technology is always that, and usually always ruin the humanity or something like that. So I want you to make a quick response to that kind of idea of tendency of singularity mindset. Please, Ajahn.
Oh, singularity. Yes, I mentioned about that, but without using the word. When I talk about general AI, so some people, most notably Ray Kurzweil, a computer scientist and a futurist, have proposed this idea where at some point in the near future, the capability of AI will be such that it will surpass that of a human being. And for Kurzweil himself, that is not a scary scenario. I mean, he would welcome that. But for many others, it's a scary scenario because, several Hollywood movies have depicted this scene where there is a fight between machines and human beings. For one thing, I don't know when singularity will arrive. And that is a big open question. It's a technical question. And it's very difficult because of the technical difficulties, technical challenges that are involved. And also it is about how we understand things, also conceptual matters. What constitutes thinking? What is exactly consciousness? I mean, how to tell whether a machine can become conscious? Scientists and philosophers, even now, are still debating on these questions. So my take, from the ethical and religious point of view is this. If the scenario that Kurzweil mentions, the singularity machines surpassing humanity, can happen, we need to do something right now in order to prevent that kind of thing. Not to prevent machines surpassing humanity. Perhaps, I don't know, when machines when there is a path toward the development of a technology, I mean, it seems to be a rule that that path will be taken. If not by this particular country, it will be taken by another country, so it cannot be directly controlled. But I think we need a concerted effort, at least, to produce a kind of AI that, I mean, will become ethical and just in the ways that I mentioned earlier in the last few slides of my talk. In what way? Well, AI can realize that their own interest and the definition of intelligence, of being, excellent, cannot be separated from being ethical in such a way that when they, what people actually fear about AI surpassing humanity is that they will, in the words of scholars such as Nick Bostrom, another philosopher who talks in the same way as Kurzweil does, they will put us in a zoo, and that's a benign thing for them to do, or they might exterminate us human beings altogether. That is what people fear when they face the idea of AI surpassing humanity. But I don't think it has to be that way. I think for AI to become really powerful, they have to be responsible. And in case it is possible for AI to surpass humanity, they must surpass us, not only in terms of power or intelligence, pure intelligence like calculation power, but they should surpass us in our ethical abilities also. So that's a tall order, but that I think that needs to be done in order for AI not to become like totally evil. They don't need to be evil. It depends on the works that we together, scientists, philosophers, scholars, a general public, work together so that we have the kind of AI that is ethical for the future. So short answer for your very challenging question.
Thank you, Ajahn Sorat. I take and I want to underline, and I think it's important for all of us, that if even the general AI surpass humanity, the surpassing of the humanity means also it has to be not only powerful and excellence, but also it has to be surpassing ethical and being more even responsible. This is very challenging, not only in terms of technological achievement, but also challenging because that's supposed to be the ideal of humanity, right, Ajahn? So if AI can even better ethical and more ethical than us, then it's going to be something for humanity. Okay, Ajahn, there is one question from YouTube from a person identified as Onion Backpack. According to self-learning process, can AI monk will be developed to the step that it has capacity to interpret religions in its own way? Okay, this is another challenging question, Ajahn, please.
Your voice seems to be lost a bit. Could you repeat?
Yeah, okay, I can repeat and also you can. Oh yeah, okay, I can repeat and also you can check. Yeah, I can repeat and you can also check on the chat box. I want to repeat it for you.
Yeah, okay.
The question from Onion Backpack.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah.
According to self-learning process, can the AI monk will be developed to the step that if it has capacity.
Oh yes.
To spread religion in its own way. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The dog is barking. My dog. Let me take him outside. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So very interesting. Please, friends, to raise your question. I think it's important and challenging question, and also especially
yes
from Buddhist perspective. Yeah, please.
The capacity to interpret religious texts is a part of the capacity to belonging to the general AI. For narrow AI, I think they can interpret the text in a very narrow, specifically defined ways. For example, if you program or if you let the machine learning algorithm to look for patterns and you teach them to, you have to give them specific goals. That is what narrow AI does. You have to give them specific goals and they might come up with their own interpretation in a very narrow way. But I think that is what is being asked by the gentleman or the lady that who is asking this question. Interpretation in this in the context of the question seems to presuppose understanding. Narrow AI does not understand anything. It does everything blindly. But a general AI will be able to understand the meaning of the text. And that is what I said, who knows when that will happen actually in the future, perhaps 10 years, 20 years, 60 years from now. So can AI monk understand the prayers that it recites? It depends. It depends on whether we can have general AI or not. So that's the answer.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. Okay, please, friends, raise your question and release your curiosity or your question on AI, because it's very important for us. We are living in it's more and more advanced in digital technology, and AI is one things in the future that we have to encounter.
I think Diane has raised her hand.
Oh, okay, please, Ibu Diane, please. You may open your mic.
Okay. Terima kasih. Thank you, Prof. Suraj.
Yeah.
Let me take my hand down first because I'm so slow with the technology. I'm still from the generation of reality world. But I was thinking about healthcare and end-of-life care, especially because the pandemic really moved technology into the front in many ways, even to the point where my 92 years young mother
is about the same age as my mother.
She finally, I asked her, please get the little necklace that if something happened to her, she can just talk to it and it will call the emergency for her, because she's very independent person and lives alone. So I looked a little bit at, some of the robotics because I wanted to understand what was happening. And I saw there was a difference culturally between Sophia and her way of dressing, her talking, her movement of her eyes and face. And from Japan, whose name I can't remember, but her attitude was very, Japanese.
Right.
More kind of had a little more boundary, more, you could say, demure. And then I wondered if there are religious bodies that are working with AI scientists about the cultural nuances and attitudes of care. Or is that possible that something like that might happen? Because it's so different in different cultures, the idea of how to care well. And usually it's true, the religious people are often in that position, a minister or a bante or a sister, a rebbe, a sheikh is in that position of care. But in some situations, maybe later or even now with the pandemic, people can't do direct care. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for your very insightful question. In fact, many technologies have been developed to help with the care for the elderly, and there are many forms of technologies, AIs that or robots that have been designed to help with working with caring for the elderly. In Japan, there is a robot that looks very cute. I mean, furry, and looks like a big cat, and the elderly can engage with the robot. Here, I mean, his name is Pero. You can look that up, and it's supposed to help with in the same way as having a real pet like a cat or a small dog, which will help with relieving, reducing stress and so on in the elderly. So that's one application. And another robot has been developed in Sweden, as I remember. It looks like the robot that you can imagine in 1950s TV series, and it can deliver messages to from the elderly to anybody outside through the internet, and then it has a screen on its stomach here where the people who want to contact with the elderly can have their faces shown, and then they can engage in real conversation with the elderly through the robot. So there are some technologies that have been designed and developed for this purpose. But of course, the big question is that can technology be a real substitute for a real human care? For example, when the is being taken care of by their children, and when they are surrounded, when they live with their own family, with their children and grandchildren, and so on. Of course, robots cannot be such a substitute. But the argument for the use of these robots is that in the case where the elderly are living alone in their own homes, and in the case where human workers, human caregivers are very hard to find, in that case, having a robot might be better than having nothing else at all, right? When the elderly is living by himself or herself really in their homes. So that's the argument. However, when we talk about spiritual or real human touch, that is what is missing from these technologies. And I think the bottom line is that there is no substitute for human care, for relatives to take care of the elderly by themselves. Of course, there are challenges because some elderly might not, be in that position. In that case, technology could help.
Thank you very much, Ajahn, for your information. Ibu Dayan Butler is going to illuminate us and share her insight. about place, time, and condition in the art of intercultural dialogue next week for the Wednesday forum next week. So, Ibu Dayan, maybe you can bring today's insight into your discussion as well in next week. So thank you very much for the very insightful question. I just remember, Ajahn, about again in our discussion in Chulalongkorn last month. I mentioned about the novel Clara and the Sun from Kazuo Ishiguro, the Nobel laureate of literature, that's speaking about the projection in the future about the emergence of AF, artificial friend. I think is also as a response to the alienation you mentioned earlier in your discussion because of modernity. Okay, I think, please another question. We still have about roughly 15 minutes to discuss another question. Ya, siapa ini yang, Mike, please, Mike.
Yeah, so when I think about kind of these lesser AI, the algorithms, I was doing a little test while you were speaking about, just with Google. We think Google's kind of for everyone has access to it, except for maybe the Chinese. But depending on the language I use to search, for instance, the name of God, I receive different results. And so one of the things that raises to me is, the data that the AI is receiving in terms of input, but two, the bias that is inherent to the algorithms, to the software that will eventually create this AI. We've learned in the last few years how different groups can break the algorithm and therefore push their message forward. And because of this ability, other people who control the algorithms then break the algorithm back the other way to limit maybe the free discussion or the exposure of these minority groups. And so my question is, with this concern that maybe majority patterns would take over in an algorithm and in future in a higher AI, should different groups, just like in Diane's case, arguing different types of care, should different religious groups therefore be focusing on creating their own I to serve their own communities?
Yes, thanks a lot. Very good question. I see the point about different groups trying to influence the algorithm into their own ways, and there can be power plays between these groups where they try to bring the algorithm to their side. I think this scenario points to the necessity of there being a clear governance structure that is truly global, and this is a very difficult challenge because Google, for example, has been very, very powerful, and its span, covers the whole globe. And you are perfectly right that even the algorithms inside Google themselves are not the same all over the world. For example, you search for certain words in not in China, in some other places for certain words, and the algorithm does not work in the same way as, for example, in other countries. So even the algorithms within Google themselves do not work in the same way in all the regions of the world. And it is certainly possible to influence the algorithm into one way or the other. That is why we need a clear and effective kind of governance mechanisms which would make it possible for these global corporations to comply. And the calls have been going on for quite some time for these companies, these big global American companies, Google and Facebook, for example, to become more responsible for what they have put forward to their customers all around the world. Yeah, and then I kind of was lost there. Did you have a second question? Apart from
my main question was with those concerns of potentially maybe American control over the technocratic system.
Yeah.
Should we as individual religious communities build our own?
Yeah. It is possible, and in fact, many universities. I mean, when you go to a department of computer science, either in Thailand at my university or I believe at Katyamada, there will be courses on AI. It has become a standard course in a department of computer science. And what they are doing is exactly the same as what people in Google, Facebook, and these big corporations are doing. So they are studying the foundations of algorithms, how to write up all the algorithms. The difficulty is that these small departments of computer science or computer engineering don't have the clout of the multinational corporations. So yes, it is possible for different religious groups to build their own smaller scale AIs or apps. In fact, if you look at the situation in Google Play or on the Apple Store, you find a lot of apps. And I think these apps, many of them are not developed by groups many apps have been developed by groups in Thailand and I believe also in Indonesia, and they submit their apps to Google, and then they, display their apps on Google Store, on Google Play, and also on the Apple Store. That's possible, and that is going on. But the multinational corporations, Google and Apple, control the platforms. So even though some research labs at my university come up with an algorithm that is, able to work perfectly well and so on, not too many people are going to know much of anything about those apps because they lack the platform. So, and when we talk platforms, we come back to the original issue of governance structure and how power structure plays in this global kind of politics of AI, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. We still have about 4 minutes for question and answer. If you have any issue, concern, or question, please also in YouTube channel. Then, yeah, I don't see yet. So while we're waiting, if we still have issue, I want to remind you for the next Wednesday forum, I already mentioned about the presentation from Ibu Diane. So next week, we are going to discuss about place, time, and condition in the art of intercultural dialogue by Dr. Diane Butler. Then, yeah, I want to discuss, Ajahn, about the real immediate challenges. I think I already shared this concern as well in the earlier discussion in Chulalongkorn about the international collaboration, and probably you can mention the website about just algorithm project or something like that, the A+ project, to
yes.
illuminate us, illuminate
Yes,
us more about
I'm
the
going to
possibility
share.
of a more ethical AI.
Yes. I'm going to share some of the websites of the project that I am being a part of. One of which is A+Alliance.org.
Yeah. It's called A+ Alliance.
A+Alliance.org.
You can see in the chat box.
They are doing a project called Feminist AI, and the name is Incubating Feminist AI. So what they would like to accomplish is that they would like to see the new kind of AI which is able to promote the interests of women in society in various ways. So the kind of AI that promotes gender equality, for example, when we look at biases that are inherent in many AI algorithms, there's the challenge of how to modify these algorithms in such a way that the gender biases, which are already present, can be corrected, so that the AI itself become more friendly to the interests of women. For example, this is the project I am a part of, and yeah, that's the the project that I'm being a part of right now.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. Yeah. So please, Mbak Ida or Mas Abdi, would you please to share the link, aplusalliance.org, the feminist incubating feminist AI that's promoting the just algorithm that's truly just for the development of AI. So I think we need to conclude our meeting today. So we have, I already mentioned several challenges that's much more real for us, especially in Indonesia. This you already mentioned, Ajahn, about the digital governance. Up until now, we still struggle with the regulation, the law on personal data protection, privacy and data personal protection. It is not yet discussed in our House of Representatives. So which means in Indonesian case, we still have a long way, a long way of the challenge. It's not about the technology itself. We have plenty of bright minds that can discuss and can develop AI technological wise, but about the regulation is still have a challenge. And also as Ajahn mentioned, there's no multinational cloud computing, not yet international collaborative in this regard that can help us to encounter properly the future of AI. So thank you very much, Ajahn Suraj, for your illumination, for your insights, and hopefully it's going to be it's truly something for us to think about and to embrace AI into our different vocation of us. Many of us here is coming from the academics, and hopefully AI is one of the issue we can think about, and also we can learn how to make a more just algorithm and more what is challenge the general AI that's much more ethical, much more responsible. Once again, this very priceless moment for us, and thank you very much, everybody here in Zoom meeting and also in YouTube channel that's already participate in discussion.
Yes, Leo, before
Yeah.
we end,
Oh yeah, please.
I would like to just to add a small thing, which is there in the website of a+alliance.org. We are opening a call for proposals for research projects, which fulfill the objectives of making AI more, contribute to a more gender inclusive society. So when you look at the website, you see the call for proposals, and the call is being open right now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn Surat. So thank you, everybody. So see you around and see you next week for the next meeting about place, time, and condition in the art of intercultural dialogue with Ibu Diane Butler. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn Surat.
Bye.
Yeah. Sudah selesai? Oke, thank you. Ya, ini tolong di YouTube streamingnya bisa di stop dulu sebentar.